Call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting of 21 December 2020. The first order of business is to review and approve the minutes of the meeting of November 16th. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions? No? Kathy, any additions, directions, or deletions? No?
No.
If none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? No? All in favor say aye.
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 Minutes are approved. We have variance request 2020-38-BZA. Staff report, please.
Yes. 2500 South 4th Street is requesting a variance to allow more than one sign on a wall for a property zone general business district. The applicant is Confu Tea. It is located inside the main business that's operating there, Care Pharmacy. The development regulations limit the number of wall signs allowed for each side of a structure or part of a structure clearly identified as a storefront to one sign. Care Pharmacy has one existing wall sign on the east wall that says Care Pharmacy, as you can see by our depiction up here. The variance request is for an additional sign to the east side of the building. The proposed sign is located on the northeast portion of the building, reading Confu Tea and a logo, and it's roughly 9.5 square feet. And the proposed sign meets the size requirements of that in a general business district.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do.
Okay.
Is the sign going to be lit?
I don't believe. I don't recall it being lit. Based on the application that I received. But we don't regulate on that for it to be lit. But I'm not entirely sure.
Is the Care sign illuminated in one manner, shape, form, or another, either backlighting or front lighting?
I haven't seen it. Well, I haven't seen it. I don't think so, but we don't require. We don't request that information when they submit. We do? Do you have a copy of the application in there? Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't feel like it is. I think it's a projecting metal frame 3D, I believe, or at least a portion of it is.
So we don't have a drawing of the sign, is that correct?
Change whose view? Yeah, because why doesn't, I don't have the logo, because it should have had the logo. Because it was part of the document I pulled it out earlier. Hold on a second, we're going to go run and get some information for you.
Okay, thanks.
Why did it go back down?
Are there any other businesses in that pharmacy?
No, it's the the operations care pharmacy, and then they're kind of like FedEx. It's an open floor plan. If I can get back to it.
I just asked that because is the next board meeting going to be another business that's there that wants to put their sign up, and then another and another?
Right. As of right now, no. They're the only ones that are operating there. As you can see by the floor plan, this is where they're located. It's kind of like a Starbucks layout. Open, no walls. Or I guess he put it here, never mind. It's here, but it's a similar layout. Oh yeah. But yes, open floor plan, all the aisles, they cleared it out of extra shelving.
Seems that all we've been doing is looking at signs.
I know. It does have LED. Okay, it's gonna be aluminum LED plexiglass is what is on this application.
So if it's gonna be aluminum LED, it's gonna be lit.
Yes. And
Did you hear that, Kathy?
I did, so individual letters or a box?
golly, I don't know where it's at. I know, that's all they gave, but they have a logo. Well, that's where they're putting it. I don't know where the logo is. It's not, when they proposed it, it was a box, but with the logos. It's not like a box, but their letters are all connected in a way, kind of like,
Like on a racetrack
yes,
at the back of the sign?
yes, like it's gonna have the plexiglass over it. And it's, because of it's gonna be kind of a box. It's gonna be a case, basically. I don't know how to describe the sign, but.
I think it's a raceway, what she said.
Okay, yeah, raceway, yeah. So it's gonna come out, be a box, the light's gonna be behind it, and they put the plexiglass with the color of their stuff. Because it's their company's name, and then their little Oriental logo with it, which I don't know why it was not part of this application, because I looked at it before. So I'll have to ask him for it again. But yeah, you have any other questions?
Any other questions?
We don't actually, we can't see the sign, is that what you're telling me? You don't have a picture of it?
No,
drawing of it?
I've seen one, but I don't know where I've seen it, because we've been back and forth with the applicant about his signs and where they're going to be located, and he submitted a couple of different applications. So I'm assuming it's probably one of the previous ones before he decided to put it on the east facing wall. It was in another application. I'm assuming that's where the other one is. So it's not part of this packet for the application.
So you have the square footage, what are the dimensions?
I have that. I do have that. 1.15 feet in height. Length is 8 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No?
Other than that'd be 12 square feet, not 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how we're supposed to approve something we can't even look at or see or know what they're talking about.
Should we just,
I'd move
Put it off.
to table this matter
Table it?
until we get more information.
That's
We don't have
completely
enough information
No.
to,
Okay. Other
I
than,
second that motion.
okay, All
So,
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
All right,
the more information you're gonna request is a visual,
yeah, we'd
Correct,
like
and
that.
Yeah,
then
we want to know
more
what the sign's going to
detail.
consist of, how big it's going to be,
okay,
what it's going to be made of.
we can do that.
How it's gonna be lit.
Yeah, all the specs.
Okay,
Okay, application 2020-39-BZA for 2614 South 24th Street.
yes.
Staff report, please.
Yes, the applicants, Robert and Patricia Steele, is requesting an exception for section 1.5.c.4 of the adopted development regs to restore a non-conforming structure that was damaged by more than 50% of its fair market value. The dwelling located at 2614 South 24th Street suffered damage by a fire on October 12th, and the reconstruction cost is more than 50% of the market value. The proposed reconstruction project is going to use the existing foundation to rebuild a light construction of the prior structure. I'm gonna scroll to this topic. Oops, it's going too fast. All right. This is the property that we're looking at. This is close. That way you can see the property line versus my lovely highlighting of the property line. Anyways, in May 2020, the roof was replaced. This location is part of Whispering Hills Phase 5A, with the dwelling structure being built in 2003. The current zoning of this location is planned unit development. All Whispering Hills subdivision phases are zoned as a PUD. The PUD was established back in 1987 when the Whispering Hills subdivision as a whole was annexed into the city limits. The subdivision phases have been developed under the R19 zoning restrictions, even though the subdivision is a PUD. R19 regulations require for a 6-foot interior side yard setback. There's no variance on file that allows for the dwelling located at 2614 South 24th to encroach the side yard setback requirement. The structure is currently roughly 5 feet from the property line, leaving the structure to be considered as a legal non-conforming structure since the adoption of the current development regulations in 2017. There has been one inquiry that has requested to be on record in support of this exception.
Do you have any questions, Kathy?
Just curious, is the outbuilding in the back of the lot also non-conforming?
I don't believe so. It should, because we just require 3 feet from the rear and side property line for
Yeah,
essential
so probably
structures.
not, okay. No, I don't really have any questions for that actual structure.
I don't have any questions.
I have some questions.
Go for it.
Number one, this is a PUD,
Yes,
and it was in the county at the time that this building was constructed?
no,
It was
so,
within the city limits when it was constructed?
correct.
And if my memory serves me correctly, PUDs have to be approved by the planning and zoning people, and then they make a recommendation to the city commission, and the city commissioners approved the PUD and where the foundation was?
So, okay, Whispering Hills is an interesting, we'll go into, as you can see.
That's a loaded question.
It
I know
is.
it is.
It is.
And
So,
I have a problem with this.
yeah, yes, because this whole subdivision is gonna run into issues that, like what, similar situations. So, as you can see, these are the different phases. do I need to zoom in more? Okay,
We'll get to it in a few minutes first. We have to go through this. When we open the public meeting, then we'll hear from the public, okay? If that's all right, ma'am.
I just wanted to clarify what a PUD was.
planned unit
Planned
development.
unit development.
Okay, thank you, that's all I didn't know what it meant.
And when planned unit developments are submitted by a developer, it includes such things, or can include such things, as streets, the location of the various structures on it, and even sometimes bushes. So that's where I'm going with this particular question.
Yes, so as you can see, these are the different phases. So when it was originally proposed back in it started out in the county in 85.
Okay?
Presented, they ran into the issue of sewer. So they started talking to the city and working with the city on getting sewer and water and all the other utilities out there. And so when once it came to about 86, end of 86, it finally was presented, was discussed, a preliminary plat in 86, did have the proposed setbacks. Supposed to be 6 feet, etc. But later on in the final in 86, the PUD, when it was established on the annexation of the subdivision as a whole, because the files that I received that I have on the county do not go into detail of the subdivision itself, because when it came part of the city to be annexed, they proposed it as coming into phases as shown, and it was going to be this portion of this land, and it had a different look altogether. So when it was annexed in, the portion that it talked about in 87 for the PUD was focused on street and sewer, and that was all it talked about. It didn't talk about regulations on setbacks until phase 3 was proposed. Oh, when was that proposed? Early 2000s, I believe. Phase 3, 97 was phase 3. And that's when they started talking in the minutes and through Planning Commission of basing it on R19. And that's the only recollection of our records that we talk about setbacks and requirements that they have. In their covenant, they do require setbacks of, oh man, I'm trying to remember their covenant. I think you have a copy of it.
It was either 5 or 6 feet or whatever the city requires.
Yes, is in their covenants, but we cannot enforce covenants. We can only enforce the PUD and everything else. Since we didn't accept the covenant as part of the PUD, we cannot enforce it back in 87.
Okay, but the house was constructed in 2003.
Correct.
According to the information that you gave us.
Correct. And I don't know what happened back in 2003, because as you can tell, the lots are smaller in phase 5A and B. I don't know what happened.
But the city, this structure was within the city
Correct.
in 2003.
Correct.
And a building permit was issued and a foundation was put in.
Correct.
And it slipped by the city.
Correct.
And now we're being asked to clean up for what transpired in 2003.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, since we're being asked to clean up something that occurred and slip through this bureaucracy,
Correct.
I am of the opinion that the property owner does not have to pay the fees relevant to an application for a variance. Because we're cleaning up the mess.
Correct, correct.
And should the property owner be required, and all of these other properties that you're saying are coming up,
Right, because based on our R19 regulations now, that we approved in 2017, require it to be 6 feet. So that's what it's based on now, since, you know, as a PUD, usually you overlay it with
yeah,
whatever zoning. So that's what is based on our regulations now. So that's why it is required for an exception of being non-conforming, since we approved it in 17.
And even if the PUD said it could be 5 feet, which it currently is, they would still have to come here.
to get a variance?
Yes.
And because,
No.
It's not a variance, it's an exception.
No.
Because it's
If
over
the, if
50%.
it's stated in the PUD, then we wouldn't be here.
but
I
you
understand.
allowed, you, not necessarily you two, but you allowed the construction of the foundation
Correct.
within that 6 feet requirement.
Correct.
And if there are more locations like this in this particular development,
Right, yeah,
then the people that it's applicable should not, they come up and we'd have to give them the variance so that we could go there. But there shouldn't be a requirement for the resident to pay a fee to clean up the city's mistakes.
Am I allowed to say anything?
Not yet. Who? Kathy, go ahead.
So, my question, for staff, I understand it came in under a PUD. And so the PUD, like you said, had to be approved. So is that, are you saying, it sounds like what you're saying, is the PUD is not binding. Now, I understand that the PUD is an overlay on top of the zoning, but why would it also not be binding?
well, okay, so the PUD itself was established in 87 and it didn't have anything. So, nothing until phase 3 in the late 90s said that it was outlined through R19. They didn't bind it to saying and make it, because at that point, we were approving the plat as phases. So it wasn't all at once. The PUD itself is over the whole section, and then we are approving plats on phases. It wasn't a full phase all the way out, and none of the plats say anything. So there's no structure that came from the development side for us to cling to. And then looking back, there's nothing I can refer to explain any of this, why it happened, and what in 2003, how it happened.
I'm not asking you to explain
Right.
what happened, because it's pretty apparent that somebody approved something that was not in conformance with your regulations.
Correct.
My feeling and my sense is that the property owners here and in future variance requests should be exempt from the application fee, because all we're doing is cleaning up a problem that the city caused.
And that's understandable.
But I don't even know what this, the side setback, what the side setback would have been back in,
2003?
yeah.
In 2003,
I mean, it could have been 5 feet, I don't
Correct.
know. But
I
yeah,
seriously doubt,
I
the 5, it would have changed from 5 foot to 6 foot.
Right, and when I don't know.
So someone's going to have to do something there. But I want to make it known that if this is going to be a problem, there should be a waiver of the application fees, because all we're doing is cleaning up somebody's mess.
So, I'm gonna do a little rebuttal here. Let's do the sign that we just did last month. It was non-conforming. Prior, it was legal. And then when we come back, because it was considered before everything. Now it was considered legal non-conforming, because this is considered legal non-conforming. But since the 50% of it was burnt down, it triggered it to be legal. So it's legal non-conforming. All those are legal non-conforming until they trigger for the non-conformity to trigger for them to come see you. So if another house in this development burns down, they're still required to meet the development regulations of, yes, the current development regulations. So
I don't have a problem with granting a variance.
right,
My problem is that we're cleaning up a mess that was created by the municipality. And the municipality charges a fee to process this variance. And I believe that in an instance where another occasion like this happens, either fire or destruction, hurricane, not hurricane, but tornado, that the resident should not be paying to clean up something that has occurred as a result of action of the municipality.
I understand, but I understand.
So they still have to do.
Yeah, so they're
We still have to get the variance to get there.
correct.
My problem is with the fee. And I don't think the property owner should be burdened with the fee.
Well, say for example,
I know, okay, can I bring up next month?
say for example, we change the side yard setbacks to 10 feet. Say the development rights get updated, we change it 10 feet. Regardless, they would still have to go through this step.
They'd still have to go through the steps. But if you change the side back to 10 feet, the whole town would have to have a
I was
variance.
using that as an example.
Right,
Yeah.
in which you've received a couple of non-conforming exceptions, and variances for setbacks. They're all legal non-conforming. So the non-conformity has been established. All we can do now is go forward. We can't go back.
I said only if something triggers that.
I agree with you. All I'm saying is that the resident should not have to bear the burden of the application fee because we're cleaning up a mess that was generated or originated by the municipality.
Go ahead, Kathy.
If I could just make a comment as well, it's possible we just don't have the full history here, and so we don't understand what the zoning was prior, and what the requirements were before the new ordinance came into effect in 2017, or whatever that date is. And I think that's part of our concern, is we don't know what it was before. Obviously, it was built 5 feet from the lot line, and that appeared to be legal at that time. It's possible that it wasn't, and the city didn't see it, or the builder built it in the wrong place, which is also a possibility, or it could have just been plain legal. And so I can see both sides of this, but I do think it's something, if we decided that a commission, that we could look at it as one of the special conditions we put at the end. I don't know if we have the authority to waive that fee, but we could certainly ask staff to look into it, and then ask city council if necessary, if they would consider waiving the fee, if we think that's appropriate.
We could. Yeah,
Oh, I can ask,
okay?
yeah.
Okay, Do you have any questions?
No.
I'm going to open the public hearing with regard to 2614 South 24th Street. Do we hear anybody, have anybody here, either pro or con? Please come to the podium, state your name and your address, please.
My name's Erin Sullivan, my address is 2615, so I live directly across the street, I think both of us do. And I'm just trying to get some clarification. It's 6 feet from the property line, the house was built less than 6 feet from the property line? Okay,
Yes.
for me, I totally agree, it's not the property owner's fault, for, lack of a better word. We're all in the same bucket here. Any one of us could have the same issue and be up here. I don't see there's a reason why to stop them from building their house. We're talking October, this happened, they're still in an empty house, it's been destroyed, so. I just want to say I'm supporting them, and I think they should be grandfathered. I think that, I totally understand the current laws, but at some point you gotta let's grandfather previous buildings from that point on. You can't penalize the current homeowner for something they didn't know. When I bought my house, nobody said anything about 5 feet to 6 feet, variances, so makes me want to go measure now because I don't want to be up here in 6 months or whatever, so. I just wanted to say I support them
Okay.
building.
David Gunning, my address is 2619 South 24th Street. I'm directly across from them. I'm also in support of the variance. I'd also add to what she said that most of the houses on this street are built identically, so they're probably all going to have a similar issue. They're all just model homes. The only thing that looks like they could change is a little about what the front could look like and how big their garage was.
See if I can get into the area.
Okay, you're on the corner, okay?
Yes, sir. And she's directly north of me, and then we're both across from
I'm
Any
sorry,
questions?
guys, I couldn't hear the speakers very well. Were they in support?
Yes, they were.
They're in favor of it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Seeing nobody else, we'll close the public hearing.
This is Mr. Steele on the cell phone. Am I able to talk yet?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, we didn't know you were there.
Oh, thank you. I agree with what the gentleman in the middle was saying about the paying the fee, but at this point, I don't have a problem with the fee, but for future, like if a tornado or something came through, you're going to have to be passing exceptions for a lot of people. When I signed for the house in 2003, I had no idea that I wasn't in conformance with where it needed to be. It's been 10 weeks since our fire. I just want to kind of get my house started back. The foundation and the roof are the only things from the fire that weren't destroyed or messed up. I just kind of want to get the house started so we can get back in the spring. That's all I had to say.
Okay. You are the original property owner?
Yes, sir. We bought it in 2003.
Okay. Thank you. And we want to get you into your houses as quickly as possible. Okay, now I'll close the public hearing. Okay, the board shall not grant an exception unless it shall, in each specific case, make specific written findings of fact directly based on the particular evidence presented to it that supports the conclusions. First question is, the proposed exception complies with all applicable regulation? No.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, applicable regulations, including intensity of use regulation, yard regulations, and limit regulations.
Has there been any evidence on any of these? If we follow what we're supposed to be doing, based upon the particular evidence presented to us. And I've read these A through G. What am I supposed to base my finding that this evidence has been presented on? I mean, what do I have before me? I want to grant this too,
Right, right.
but if we're going to do this, we should do it correctly.
Right, this exception is for strictly the side yard setback, what it's going to be, the exception of the exception for it to be still conforming, because it's the 50%. So it's an existing use structure already there, and it's part of our section for the nonconformance in 1.05 requires when it's fire damage, we do an exception for it. And reading through these, intensity of use.
Will the proposed exception comply with all applicable provisions of these development regulations, including intensity of use, regulations, yard regulations, and use limitations?
Clearly it doesn't.
Is the staff report telling us that it does?
Yes, my suggestion, I'll let y'all know, my suggestion for a change into the next development regs is put it as a variance, so it doesn't do this, because a variance makes more sense than an exception, to me.
Why is this not a variance request?
For whatever reason in our development regs, said that it needs to be an exception, and the 1.5C4 specifically says that if a non-conforming structure that is damaged past 50% needs to get an exception with the BZA.
But that doesn't,
So are we giving an exception because it doesn't meet the side setback? Are we giving an exception because it was destroyed more than 50% of its value?
I believe you're doing it for the side setback.
then we,
What triggered the exception was because it was over 50% damage of its market value.
Correct.
Which I get that. So we're not addressing the setback requirement at all. We're just leaving that like it is and only giving an exception for the 50%.
Yes, okay, so the exception
Even
is,
though we do this.
correct, so the exception is to allow it to continue to be a non-conforming structure. Similar to
So
how we
have
did,
to come back and get a variance for the side setbacks in order to be legal conforming.
yeah. We should be,
Is that right?
that's how it sounds, yes.
Because we've got two issues. We've got more than 50% destroyed, which I get. But we've also got the setback issue, which is clearly a variance issue.
Right,
So we can give the exception for it to be able to rebuild so that it can go back to the way it was, but he's still gonna be legal non-conforming because of the setback.
correct.
and if there's ever another fire, and the resident at that time wants to rebuild the house, if he doesn't have a variance, he's gonna have to go through that application again.
Yeah,
Yes, because this is
Well, I'm seeing
exception,
it.
yes.
unless I'm
That's my
wrong.
understanding as well. Yes.
So which way do you
Wouldn't
want
it
us
make
to
more
go?
sense to have a variance application for a foot and then he can just rebuild?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah, because I don't know. I don't know.
I need someone to help me understand.
Yeah, Kathy, I completely understand what you're saying. I think we do need to ask Julie about this, and, I will probably just have her, contact you guys via email or something, because you're right that if another fire happened, he would have to do the exception again, because he doesn't have the variance.
Do you have the development regs?
But I don't know if the exception is a state statute requirement, or if it's just something that the development regs has. So I would need to ask Julie about that.
So given the
I know that,
requirements
like the variances,
that
you
we're
know,
supposed
the requirements you guys vote on for the variance.
Right.
Those are state statutes. I'm assuming these are also state statutes, is what I'm assuming. But again, I'd have to ask Julie.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because remember, we were
100%.
gonna look into changing, the wording on one of those variances, and we couldn't.
So this is similar, you remember when we did the multiplex down here on Shawnee? How it was, we did an exception of use.
The duplex and.
So here's my question.
Go for it.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
keep interrupting. So on the first, on 1A, on the findings of fact, it says to be able to approve this exception, they have to meet the yard regulations. But they don't. So how could we approve the exception if they don't meet the yard regulations?
The exception is.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, to rebuild.
I'm sorry?
Personally, I would rather
Could you
give,
repeat?
I would rather go and give the variance so that the property owner can move on getting his house rebuilt. The foundation is the problem. It's within the current regulation of 6-foot setback.
Half of these requirements that we're supposed to find tonight, based on the evidence presented, have nothing to do with this property. Off-street parking and loading areas will be provided. And we're supposed to find that, yes, we agree that this was proven. Number one, it doesn't apply, and number two, nobody said a word about any of these things. I mean, I want to grant this.
Right.
I almost feel like I'm at a jury nullification deal where, yeah, we know they're guilty, but we're gonna find them innocent anyway.
So on number 3 on the screen that she says, right, that has setbacks in yards, it says a structure which is in non-conformance with respect to a side or rear yard shall not use the existing setback in expanding or enlarging, but may be enlarged if the new part of the structure complies with the setbacks of the district. So that right there tells me that he needs a variance. And then once he has a variance, then he can do, we can allow what he's trying to do here. I mean, but if he doesn't meet the setback, then we can't grant the exception at all because it doesn't meet the setback. Or we could grant the exception, but he wouldn't be able to build in that last foot.
The exception is still allowed to. So the structure shall not be restored in such building as not in conformance with the regulations. So the exception is to allow it to be rebuilt in that position to keep it as a legal non-conforming. Now, the question of if it, in the future, if something similar happens, and I don't know if this covers it in my words. I don't know that much about.
It almost sounds like we should do the exception and a variance for that. That would just cover. And that would just be one application and one fee.
I know, that's why when I questioned it in the beginning, why is it an exception? It didn't make sense to me.
And again,
It's, any solutions is not gonna help this item right now.
so do you guys feel like you can't even, proceed with this exception and get it passed tonight?
Not based on the information
Not for
that's
me.
been provided,
Okay.
but we could go and grant a variance.
We can't because we don't have an application for variance.
Yeah.
And
Has
that
to
put,
be advertised.
and that puts the property owner who's trying to, probably has a contractor ready to go in a bind for another month.
Yeah, I've got a guy waiting to do construction, waiting for the permit.
Yeah, that's
Can we do
what I just said.
a special meeting?
No,
No,
it
because
would have to be
we have to do notifications according
for
to
a
statute.
variance, yeah, for the statutes of a variance.
Well, I mean, but we could do a special meeting before our next meeting, at least that would speed up the process a little bit.
Okay, everyone hold on a sec. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. How about we just do, see what their general understanding of this planning. Time period. About exception.
Now, is the public able to see what
No,
you're?
I took that off, off the, actually, I don't know.
Yeah,
Cause I don't know if they can see it up there, but I am curious.
if Kathy can see it, they can see it.
She shouldn't, because I took it off share. That, I'm sure. Let's see.
Dick, you see what I'm saying, though, on these last five? I mean, how are we supposed to find there's adequate utility, drainage, and other necessary facilities? I mean, how's that even applicable?
Don't ask me.
But if we're supposed to find, yes, that's been proven, how can we do that?
This is Mr. Still, am I allowed to talk again?
Yeah, go ahead,
Sure,
we're
go
kinda in
ahead.
a recess,
Are you on recess right now?
kind of.
No, go ahead,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
listening.
yeah, go.
I mean, I filled out the exception paperwork. I didn't know if it was supposed to be variance or exception. I followed what the zoning office tells me to do, or the planning office. And it's like, we're in limbo here. And I didn't like paying the application fee, because basically in 2003, you signed 40-page document. Raleigh builds a home, you assume it's the code or whatever, because you have it inspected and you sign and buy a house. And now we're kind of in limbo here because of the regulations or laws or whatever. I've got to fill out either more paperwork or pay another fee and wait another month, or even if it's a special meeting, when is that going to be? In like second or third week of January? It just,
Those are different.
just keep in mind, we're in limbo here.
Yes,
Jackie,
All we're wanting to do is replace the
Where are
house
these
on the
different?
current foundation.
understand.
Jackie, those are different requirements for exceptions right there.
I know, why are these?
That's
used?
planning commission. The planning commission shall find the following.
Yeah, oh, well, that doesn't help me.
Mr. Steele, we're trying to get it worked out for you, but we have to be legal as well. We have to follow the state statutes in order, if we have to do
There-
a different action.
That's the one.
state statute, outlines what our requirements are. So, we understand that it's a bit of a pickle for you, but we want to make sure that you don't have to do this again.
Understand.
I see that she's gone to look something up.
Yeah, she called Julie, and no other events exception to provision.
Oh, calling Julie, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so go That's Board of Zoning Appeals. So that's,
Yeah, that's.
And that's exactly what we have.
Not a variance, further no conditions shall. And as you saw earlier, on 1 point, whatever, it specifically says y'all need to do an exception. So.
And the first one knocks it out because it's non-conforming.
Right.
1A.
well, what exception would you have that would not be not conforming?
Wait, what?
I mean, if,
Okay,
what exception could you have that would be non-conforming?
Well, the other exceptions that I've had so far in my career is that the one, we had an exception to this non-conforming use.
Use.
Yep. Use was different, since this is a
But the only
structure.
thing here is the difference between 5 and 6 feet, because there's a, variance for that.
Intensity of use regulations, yard regulations.
Yeah.
So is the side setback a yard regulation?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is,
What, can you show what, there are exceptions that there are specifically listed as permitted in the development regulations? Do you know where that section would be? What the exceptions are specifically listed as permitted?
So the exceptions are, let's see, we'll go to, oh man, how do I'm trying to think where it like gives examples what you're trying to ask. So if we go, let's see what this says.
I would probably search the word exceptions.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah, so.
where the board is authorized to grant the exceptions.
Administration. This is for planning commissions. So this is prior. Exception will not be charged. Okay, next page. Oh, well, that's not all that much helpful either. Size, shade, property, location. Okay. That doesn't. This is for overlays. Line setbacks less than the requirement. Okay, so that's this. That's it.
So according to the ordinance, when it talks about, well, it's not an exception, never mind, forget that.
She's trying to log on.
Hmm?
Julie's gonna be logging on.
If we could just use the state statute language, that would be fine.
Oh, you're kidding.
What's wrong?
It's not let her join her account because you're running out of her account. Okay. Keep trying, Julie. I'm phone to air, I'm gonna let her know what you said earlier. So Julie did say that these conditions that you vote on, either agree or disagree, that if it's not applicable to this particular, property that we're dealing with, that you can just say it's not applicable, and then move on to the next one. So just briefly skimming over it, Julie thinks that A through D would be applicable, and then E through G would not.
But how does the 5-foot setback, side setback, comply with the yard regulations?
Well, see, you're not complying with the yard regulations, so.
That's what the question is.
Yeah, A,
That's what the question is here.
yeah, it states it.
Which number, I'm sorry?
A.
A.
1A.
So the proposed exception applies to all applicable provisions of these development regulations, intensity of use rate. Well, that would be, I would think agree, because this exception states, where are we at? Can you scroll up a little bit?
What are you looking for?
4. If a non-conforming structure is damaged by more than 50% of its fair market value, such building shall not be restored if such building is not in conformance with the regulations for a zoning district in which is located, or an exception is granted by the BCA.
But we can't grant an exception for a setback.
You're not granted the exception for this, technically the setback, you're granted the exception to rebuild the
Non-conformity.
non-conforming structure.
But A says the proposed exception complies with all provisions of the development regulations,
So that's why-
including intensity of use, yard regulations, and use limitations.
Because that triggers questioning why it's not a variance at that point.
So I wonder if these exceptions should be exceptions and variances together in one.
That's not what we have.
Or why it's an exception at all. Or on structures, because I don't think any of the other ones required.
Did you say that the state regulation?
Well, the state statute in the definition, oh, that might be a reg. Oh, where was that?
The state statute what?
Can you read?
The state statute,
So, A. So how could they answer A? The Sandy proposed exception applies to all applicable provisions of development regulations, including intensity of use regulations, yard regulations, and use limitations. Say that again? It's gonna still be a legal, non-conforming.
So, are we just looking at it as the damaged portion, not the fact of the side yard setback?
Okay, so what Julie's saying for A is that it is applicable to all the development regulations. It's just the exception is to rebuild still a non-conforming structure. So it'd still be a legal non-conforming structure.
Okay, so you're considering it still as a legal non-conforming structure, which allows a setback that it currently is as being okay. So the exception is the fact where allowing it to rebuild.
You're allowed to stay as a legal non-conforming structure.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Does it clear up
Yes.
the muddy
So
water?
we don't have to go through a variance to make it a legal non-conforming structure.
It's considered legal non-conforming at this time when the current development regulations was adopted in 2017.
Okay.
So Dick just asked that they don't have to, that variance does not have to be granted with this as well.
Unless they wanted to make it legal conforming.
Right, unless they
They're
want
not
to
have
make
to
it
do this.
legal conforming.
Right,
Or,
Again,
unless they, yes.
yeah,
want
but,
to do variance.
you know, it defaults into being grandfathered or legal non-conforming since we.
Well, if he's certain that he can get a building permit if we pass this, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's no question, if anything, we would have been more lenient.
Yeah, so Kathy just wanted to make
Anything in
sure,
the front.
everybody, all the commissioners want to make sure that he will not issue a building permit if the board approves this exception. And I can't.
And E, F, and G are non-applicable.
Correct.
Yep. So as long as the exception is approved, planning is the one that has to sign off on that for the building permit.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, then we can go ahead.
In this call, or
Whatever you feel comfortable with doing.
do you want me to end the call, Julie? Do you want me to hang up on you? Okay, do you want me to put you on speaker? Okay, we'll not put you on speaker.
Go ahead.
There's some little kids in the background. Okay, but I'll just put you on, just listen.
Yeah, you can mute her.
Is this still a public meeting going on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we can take up the questions.
Okay, the board shall not grant an exception unless it shall, in each specific case, make specific written findings of facts directly based upon the particular evidence presented to it that support the conclusions that A, the proposed exception complies with all applicable provisions of these development regulations, including intensity of use regulations, yard regulations, and use limitations. Start the voting with Commissioner Bates.
I'll agree.
I agree.
I agree.
The proposed exception at the specified location will contribute to and promote the welfare or convenience of the public. I'll start with Commissioner Kim.
Agree?
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 The proposed exception will not cause substantial injury to the value of the other property in the neighborhood in which it is to be located.
Agree?
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 The location and size of the exception, the nature and intensity of the operation involved or conducted in connection with it, and the location of the site with respect to streets giving access to it are such that the exception will not dominate the immediate neighborhood so as to prevent development and use of neighboring property in accordance with the applicable zoning district regulations. In determining whether the exception will so dominate the immediate neighborhood, consideration shall be given to 1, location, nature, and height of buildings, structures, walls, and fences on the site, and number 2, the nature and extent of landscaping and screening on the site. Commissioner Kim?
Agreed.
I
Agreed.
Agree.
Now, we have been informed that paragraphs E, F, and G are not applicable. So there will be no voting.
Well, I think they were probably addressed in the PUD, so, I mean, they were applicable at one time, just not so much for this exception.
Right. So, do we agree that they're not applicable at this time?
Yes, I do.
I do.
I guess.
Okay. Therefore, based on the finding and the facts, an exception for 2614 South 14th Street to restore a non-conforming structure that has damaged by more than 50% of its fair market value in Whispering Hills PUD zoning district is approved.
Sounds good. That's it?
Yep.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Next meeting, January 25th.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Still.
Welcome to well, I guess we'll meet next month to review the sign application, right?
Correct, January 25th is your next meeting, because we have a holiday on the 18th.
Do we have other cases?
Yes.
On
Oh,
the
not today.
25th?
On the 25th, yes. We have another fire structure.
Where's that one at?
1922 Fifth Avenue.
Yep.
It used to
It used to be the
be,
daycare,
the daycare.
yeah.
The 1922 Fifth Avenue is next month, another fire structure, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna stop recording.
And Julie says she.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
That'll-